We're going to talk to the world bronze medalist, Alex Rose, and we're going to start right now. For Black Friday here at Throws University, we're offering 30% off all of our books, courses, and training programs. Head over to throwsuniversity.com. This offer will last until Tuesday, December 2nd. Make sure you use code BFTHROWS30 at checkout when you're trying to get that brand new program, that new book, or that new course. Now's the time to set yourself up as a coach or an athlete to have your best season yet. Now, let's get back to the video. We just finished up our first ever U.S. Throws Coaches Clinic here at Garage Strength via Throws University. And one of the big things that we did is we provided coaches with all these different unique discussions around athlete development, programming, how to manage a large group setting. But one of the coolest things we did was bring in an athlete like Alex Rose. And Alex came online. He talked to us about the pressures of what it meant to compete at the world stage, what it means to be a 3-time Olympian, what it means to manage all these things, and even that long-term commitment, how it took him until the age of 30 to make his first world championship final. He goes through all these different key aspects that he's used to help for that long-term development. So stick around, make sure that you take your notes, and you can teach this stuff to your athletes. If you're an athlete, make sure that you're really paying attention because it's going to help you become a champion. Let's get started.
3-time Olympian, Samoan record holder, bronze medalist from the World Championships in the men's discus throw, one Alex Rose.
Wow. All right. Thanks, Jason, for the introduction. I appreciate it. Can you hear me okay over there?
Yeah, we got you.
Okay, perfect, man. It's cool, hearing that introduction and just hearing about the journey I've had, right? Because it has been, 10 years of competing with Garage Strength and Dane, and the Santa Hat days were a long time ago, but they're still they hold a fond memory in my heart. So what I'm here to talk to you guys today about is a couple different things. So I'm going to talk about consistency. I'm going to talk about simplicity, and then finally I'm going to talk about killing your ego, which was maybe the most important thing that I've had to do for my own personal success. And then after that, I think we're going to open it up to some Q&A. But I'll start with consistency. So again, long-term consistency is so important to have a vision of from an early start in the process. So for me, starting out training at Garage Strength, I was a 60 meter guy, basically. I was All-American back in the day at Central Michigan University. I threw 56 meters to place fifth, I believe, which isn't really how NCAA's goes nowadays, but it was good enough back then. And I really have the story of just slowly chipping away at my goals, probably slower than most in the sport. I'm 34 years old now. I just turned 34 last week, actually. And I never made a world or Olympic final before I was 30. I would say probably 99% of throwers, gave up their professional career well before then. But I think for me, it's truly been the perfect fit working with Dane and kind of figuring out our planning and how to be consistent, because consistency means different things in different points of your life. So early on, when I'm younger, maybe when I'm 25 years old, 24, I was doing 4 or 5 lifts a week. I was working on these huge technical changes to kind of get them ingrained in my body. And I would say there were entire years that were spent, just hammering one simple cue, really. Like, we'd talk about other things, but man, it would just be, hey, Alex, your right foot isn't getting down in the middle of the circle. It's getting down 4 inches to the left. We need it to be in the center. And that was 2016. And maybe getting slightly better at that was 2017. So you have to be consistent with these ideas and thought processes, because I think more often than not, there's so much to think about with the throw, and there's so many things pulling you in different directions. But if you can just remember the plan is I look like this. The plan is I'm moving with all of my momentum and my right foot is in the middle of the circle. That's my only goal. Then it can really open you up to kind of getting in this flow of training where you're doing all the little things right, and you're really just, you're not lost in the process, which is super easy to do during throwing. Another thing about consistency. So a unique thing about my journey is that I never truly trained full time. I was always doing something else, whether at the beginning I was a graduate assistant coach and I was getting my master's degree in business. And then shortly after that, I became a full-time technical sales engineer, which I've been doing ever since. So I've been doing that for about 8 years now, I think, 7 years now. Consistency at the beginning was five lifts a week and 6 throwing sessions. Dane can attest to the fact that is not my schedule now. I'm fighting for dear life out here with 2 young kids. I'm working full time. So we have a program that reflects that. It's not always, doing this insane training program to get better. It's doing what's physically possible. And for long-term consistency, that program needs to change often. And I would say, and Dane can attest to this, we probably went from 5 days a week lifting down to 4 or down to 3, over those 8 years. And we slowly realized what works for me with training. We had entire years that were a wash. And in 2018, I didn't throw over 60 meters. But what did we do? We reviewed the results, and then we made a new program that, we thought would lead me to that point where I'm at now. The next thing I'm going to talk about is simplicity. So I remember, and this is in Tokyo 2 months ago now, we were talking over all of the things that I would have to do in order to get a medal. So we kind of worked in reverse, like, all right, imagine you're on the podium. What happened to get you there? Well, obviously 1 is a very far throw. How far is that throw? Depending on conditions, probably between 67 to 70 meters. Okay. How do you throw 67 to 70 meters? 1 is you need to feel good in the moment. You have to be peaked. So we probably peaked our lifting better than we ever have, right? I remember we just had a conversation planning for this next year, but I think it was like 6 days out squatting at like 75% max, and then 5 days out we did a quick bench and an Olympic lift, and it barely anything really, but we figured it out this time around, and I felt primed. But the most important thing, I think, is we talked about technically what I need to do in the circle to throw farther, because I've been throwing the best I ever had this year, huge practice PRs, things like that. And what it came down to was getting my weight over my left out of the back, having a better high point with the discus, staying on the finish longer and trying to use the right side of the ring. And then we broke that down even to the cue of throwing higher. That was my cue at Worlds, is to throw the discus higher, because I always had this crazy fast release, but my angle was always super low. And we realized that if I just think about throwing higher, all of those other things happen. My weight does go over my left. My right foot does ground quicker. I have a huge catch, and I naturally will throw the discus higher if my weight's in the right spot. So I think part of it too is figuring out how to make it simple, because so many athletes will overthink the 100 positions and 100 cues that you have to really throw far. But how do you get them to do multiple things with one simple cue? And I think that's sort of the magic in Dane and I's relationship as coach and athlete, is that he understands that about me, because maybe because I've been forced to work on limited time. I'm not the typical athlete who's in his gym 6 days a week. I'm not throwing 6 days a week. I'm a sales engineer first and foremost. And I mean, even before that, I'm a father of 2 and a husband. So every ounce of time that I have to train has to be incredibly intentional and incredibly efficient. And I think that's just a testament to our growth together and having the performance that we did in Tokyo, is that we figured out how to make things as simple as possible. And even though I was 33, and even though, I had knee surgery last year, we constantly revamped the training to reflect the position I was in, and we continue to grow. I mean, I don't know if Dane has shared a presentation with my placement finishes or the personal bests throughout the years, but it really has been about a meter a year in discus. I think when I started working with you, I was at 60 meters or 61, and now I'm at 71.48, and hopefully we can get another meter a year until Los Angeles. I know this was pretty quick on the couple thoughts that I had, but I wanted to open it up for questions now, and I think that might be the best place to go. So consistency and simplicity, those are the two things I wanted to really reach on.
So what we'll do here is anyone can raise their hand for a question, and then Dane will re-speak that question to Alex using the microphone.
Is my mic?
I can
I
hear
don't know
you,
if my
Dane.
mic's. Oh, you can. Okay.
Yep.
You didn't talk about ego, Alex.
Oh, right. Yeah, that last part. I saw I was running on 10 minutes. I didn't know what your schedule was like, but yeah, so I can't believe I forgot to touch on that. I'll touch on ego right now. So a little bit of backstory about the middle of my career. So in 2019, I'd thrown 66 for the first time. This was basically the first big step I'd made since Rio to improve, since starting to work full time, which was really tough. I was driving about 1,000 miles a week. I'm in a car. It was really challenging. So 2019, I qualified for Doha World Champs, and I failed to make the final. At the time I chalked it up to not being peaked enough, not feeling as great because I had to work, and I had all these excuses, which whether they're true or not, it doesn't matter. So the next big championship after COVID in 2021, the Olympics, I'd gotten even better. I'd thrown 67 meters that year. I'd thrown in my first Diamond League meets, things like that. And again, I failed to qualify for the final. And this was when I was 29. So this was the last competition I ever had in my 20s. And I almost quit, right? Because I'm a two-time Olympian. I've thrown really far. I've been to Diamond Leagues. Like, that's a pretty awesome career. But there was something in me that knew that I just had to keep going, right? I knew that I could be a finalist. I knew I could shoot and compete for a medal. And I was really disappointed. So the biggest thing that I had to do was I had to kind of look at myself in the mirror and say, you are bad at competing at big meets. You're not good at it. You're not a good competitor right now. Why is that? And how do we get better at it? Because if you're going to keep going, then you have to figure this out. And I think innately as athletes and competitors, we want to be that guy or that person. We want to be the person who goes into the comp and we're never afraid, we're never nervous. But that's just not the reality, right? And I think in order for me to become a good competitor, I had to first admit that I was a terrible competitor and fix it. So I remember this. It was 2022. My wife got pregnant, and I was super motivated in training the whole time. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm doing this for my future son. You're trying to find reasons to motivate you, everything like that. And I remember I thought about I looked up some things that I could do that would help with nerves during big meets, and there are breathing exercises and establishing a rhythm to where, okay, I know I'm going to take 2 steps to the front of the circle. I'm going to close my eyes. I'm going to take 1 breath. I'm going to take 3 steps. I know exactly where my feet are going to land. I'm going to wind, and then I'm going to throw. And I did that whole season. I did that routine every single throw that I practiced in 2022. So by the time it came to Worlds in Eugene, it felt completely different than Tokyo. It felt different than Doha and Rio and all these times where I failed to have that kind of performance. And I made my first world final, and I placed 8th. And there's been little variances in that I've improved upon throughout the years, but I truly feel like I got better at it since 2022. And then in 2023 Budapest, I made the final. Got a little excited during the final, so I placed 12th. Paris, I was injured, but still wound up placing 12th. And then finally, before Tokyo this past season, I kind of had a similar moment. I'm like, okay, I'm making these finals, I'm doing good, but I've never truly competed for a medal, and I feel like I'm good enough to. So Dane and I talked about this, and we made the plan of doing these mock meets, which are pretty common. A lot of throwers do them, but I kind of ramped it up a notch. So I had a speaker out there with crowd noise just blaring in the back of the ring to make me really uncomfortable. And I would sit out there and I would do the whole routine with the warm up and the call room and waiting around for a long time, trying to stay warm while you're really nervous. I would intentionally make myself incredibly nervous. And then I would give myself 2 warm ups and 3 throws that were 12 minutes in between, just like the qualifying rounds at Worlds and the Olympics. And I found very quickly that emulating this experience and practicing being uncomfortable was huge for being able to manage it on the day yet again. So I would have someone out in the field and I would mark every single throw. I would have mock meets where I would take 3 throws, and if I didn't throw past a certain distance, I had to go home. And with the schedule that I had, wasting my damn time going out there and doing this, it was frustrating. And it truly motivates you if you can, I don't know, force yourself to face your fears more often. And with the way that Tokyo wound up working out, where it was the most stressful final they've ever had. It was pouring rain. I I have knee issues, and I warmed up like 2 hours before the competition actually started. Like, all of these things weren't working in my favor, but I could tell that everyone else was nervous. Everyone else was slipping, and everyone else was freaking out mentally. But I looked into the crowd, and I remember seeing you, Dane, and we just were both smiling at each other and nodding, because that's what I've been working on this whole year. And that's what I've been forced with my whole career, is working with these hurdles of time management and doing 10 things at once and still trying to be a world-class athlete. So I truly credit my performance to preparing the way we did. That's what I have about destroying your ego, because it's the only way to improve. So thanks for reminding me to talk about that, Dane. I almost forgot my 3rd bullet point because my laptop died behind my phone.
I also wanted to point out too, Alex was a pretty normal high school thrower. So I think for a lot of the high school coaches, if he's not a guy that was a 65-footer, like 200-plus foot thrower in high school. So I think it's something that we as high school coaches here too, I think you guys could relate, or you might have a kid similar to him right now. So does anybody have any questions for him currently? I did, but he answered it. Oh, okay.
Dane, can you relay the questions through the mic, by the way, because I can't hear anything but the mic.
Yeah. I don't think the other mic was working. This one's on. I don't know if
that one's working for me. I can hear that like loud and clear.
Okay, pussy. Okay, so what's the number one piece of tactical advice to throwing far in really bad conditions like Tokyo? I added that part. Sorry.
Okay. That's a great question. I would say that a wet circle or a slippery ring, anything like that, it's honest. So if you're slipping out of the back, it's because you're leaning too far into the middle. Now, in some circles, it's almost impossible to not slip. It's just sort of rolling the dice and staying as balanced as you can. But I would say practice in slippery rings to see where you're slipping and why you're slipping. It's so beneficial. If you're always slipping out of the back, you're obviously leaning into the circle. If you're slipping at the front of the ring and falling out the front, it's because your weight's not over your right leg, if you're a right-handed thrower, at the front of the circle. And I think a lot of the time, people will shy away from, there's a gap in the rain and it's gonna, from 2 to 5 we can throw, so let's just wait till then. And I highly discourage that. I would say embrace the elements, throw in bad weather often, because it will teach you so much about staying balanced that you can't get in a dry ring. Because you can get away with pulling out of the back if you're pretty athletic in a dry circle, but as soon as the conditions go down, then you can't.
I like that. So the circle is honest to your technique, the weather conditions. Yeah, you go ahead.
If you consider yourself a relatively say was the biggest game changer that made you a more successful collegiate and professional athlete?
Yeah. So how did you take? You didn't throw 62 feet in high school like I did, Alex. So you weren't above average. So how did you make that jump to collegiate level and then collegiate to the next post collegiate level?
What do you find like was the biggest? If he was only like an average thrower in high school, what was the biggest game changer in his playing?
Yeah, the biggest game changer.
The biggest game changer for being an average high school thrower. So I think for me personally, I had a little bit of a unique story for why I was an average thrower. I started a little bit late junior year. I was a little bit underdeveloped in the weight room. So I started lifting my freshman year and I gained like 40 pounds pretty quick. But I would say that there's almost no expectations for a thrower like me when I'm going into college. I was a walk-on. I think I had books. I had a book scholarship. I don't know if that's a thing anymore. I went to Central Michigan University, and I had the attitude of, what do I have to lose, right? I'm here. No one even knows who I am. They're recruiting these other athletes in my conference, and I'm kind of a nobody. So why not prove everybody wrong? And why not work as hard as I can and really become a student of the sport? I remember watching YouTube videos all the time in college of all the different throwers at the time. Ben Harradine, I remember watching him a ton, and obviously Robert Harding and Gerd Cantor. But there's these resources available for people who were like me, who feel like they're a step behind maybe, and becoming obsessed and really become a student of the sport kind of leads to understanding the movement pattern a little bit quicker, I would say.
So lifting weights, becoming a student of the sport, watching video would be the big things.
I think like passion is probably the key word.
Yeah,
College is when you really found the passion.
Yeah.
You're into your right back right there. So I was saying, what is your goal and what are you thinking about on your first throw in a major meet?
Yeah, you're at. And maybe you might need to explain like qualifying versus the final. But what are you thinking about on the first throw of the comp at a major comp like Worlds?
Yeah. So this is another thing we worked on quite a bit is having that first throw be a max effort throw. You're not trying to just get a safe throw to make it to the final, even if you think that you're good enough to do that, because that's a slippery slope. You start changing things and trying to fade off of the finish a little bit just to be safe and not foul. Next thing you know, you have 2 fouls, and there's the most nerves you'll ever face in a meet if you have 2 fouls in qualifying round. So I think what we did pretty well is we worked on the 2 warm-up throws that you get, because each athlete will only get 2 warm-up throws in the stadium before the competition starts. Those are like hammering the finish, hammering the throws to where you're ready to walk in and throw 100%, because it sounds so simple and so dumb, but it is so easy to get slightly nervous in those huge meets in the stadium. And, there's who knows what's going on, 100 heats, like it's nuts. And there's always crowd eruptions every 5 seconds. So you can't depend on, I'll figure it out, I'll be cool in the moment. Like, no, you have to get in there. You have to act like it's the competition throw in the warm-ups and get ready to blast it. And that's worked pretty well for me. And it's worked well for Sam too.
So I just wanted to ask, naysayers, how did you kind of deal with that? You were 34, you had 2 kids, having to deal with teenagers. Obviously, you've gotten to the point in your career. So how did being on the other side of 30, how did you deal with naysayers when you get into pinnacle?
So how did you deal with naysayers, like people not believing you, or people not, especially being older, not seeing your potential? Maybe how did you deal with that to make your first final after 30? And then as you continued even since then, how did you handle that?
Yeah. So for me personally, I always competed for Samoa with a chip on my shoulder, right? Because I've never had any funding. They've never paid for any. I'm still waiting for reimbursement for my flight to Tokyo. That's a fun fact that's happening right now. And I found out that Samoa didn't submit my my prize money form on time, so I'm dealing with that myself too. But it's all good. It's just the stuff that you deal with for a small country. But anyways, I compete with a chip on my shoulder because I don't have the support that a lot of these larger countries do. And with that, there is a certain, he's making it to the final, he's doing all right, but he's never really a real threat. And that always got under my skin because I knew what I was capable of long term. And all of this time, I realized that, okay, they're seeing this guy he's throwing in the mid to high 60s, and he's pretty consistent in the mid 60s, but he's hovering around 8th place. And meanwhile, what I'm seeing is somebody who's waking up at 5 a.m. I'm driving 3 hours to Fort Wayne. I'm doing sales calls until lunch. I'm jumping out at a random high school gym to train for 30 minutes. I'm driving 3 hours home. I'm going to the gym at 8:30 p.m. And then I'm going to sleep and doing the same thing the next day. So internally, I was always like, I could be so great if I really had the time that these guys do. So it's up to me to prove them wrong. I can still do this. I don't care if I don't have the time or the support system that everybody else does. I knew that I could still do it, and I'm always motivated by other people sort of doubting me. And you know what? I've already talked to Dane about this a little bit. There have been some small comments. As if you're doing well in something, there's always going to be someone who's commenting on it negatively, right? And they're like, oh, well, it was the bad weather and he just got lucky and he got a medal. That's the type of motivation that I honestly kind of like, because I can't wait to try to prove them wrong. Whether I do again or not, I know I'm getting older. I think I will. But you kind of have to embrace that doubt and a little bit of that negativity to be like, you know what, I'm going to take that negative, I'm going to turn it into a positive, and I'll show you how great I am.
Yeah. We'll do. Have you signed any fat NIL deals? Basically, your name, image.
God,
I think maybe. Yeah, I don't know if the benefit though, probably with the schedule, with your schedule for next year will probably be better.
Yep. Oh,
the
absolutely.
Comp schedule.
Yep, for sure. And that's part of what's nice about next year is that I'll be qualified for the Diamond League meets, which I've struggled to get into before for various reasons, even though my ranking was high. So I know what my season's going to look like, and I can plan well in advance, which is huge for taking time off and planning flights and doing all these things that a lot of people probably don't have to worry about.
Yep.
You asked him, how did it feel going to round 6 and he wanted to make a bronze medal, given the torrential downpour that was that competition and everything that went up to that?
How'd you feel going into round 6?
So round 6, I knew that I had already gotten a medal. Is that the round you're talking about, or are you talking about going into round 5?
Yeah, round 6, knowing, and a lot of you guys, they changed. I don't know if you know or not, but at the World Championships, they changed the way in the final. So they'll take 10 to the final, and then from round 4 they take 8, and then from round 5 they take 6.
It's
then
12 initially.
Yeah, it's 12 initially, and they cut it down each round. So it's sort of like a sudden death is each round. So then by the last round, you pretty much, and by the time Alex would have went in on round 6, he knew he had the medal.
Yeah, right. So
yeah, well, describe the feeling.
So I saw Denny's throw. I knew it was far, but I knew it wasn't quite as far as mine. And I saw he fouled or something, and I had a brief shock that went throughout my body where I was like, holy shit, dude, it just happened. It finally happened. And then I immediately had to just okay, I don't feel like that. It's time to throw far. But I mean, honestly, I could not even put together a decent throw. I remember just kind of pulling out of the back and I was just, I don't even remember round 6. I just remember raising my hands up after I left the ring and, just being completely overjoyed that gotten the first medal for a Pacific Islander. But that's something I talked about with you. If there's a critique of the season, which I think it's important always to look back, it's like, I didn't handle that pressure the best because I didn't expect it. I didn't expect to go into round 6 with the chance to throw a little bit farther and maybe get silver or gold. Because I think Alekna threw like 70 centimeters further than me or something, which is attainable.
Yeah,
I had another meter in me potentially. So yeah, it's just something to think about for next year.
Yeah. I think I wouldn't say it's a negative, but the lesson would be you could have, and at that point, Stahl was under Alekna. So you could have put quite a bit of pressure on both of them.
Absolutely.
Now we saw the response from Daniel, but that would have been but it doesn't matter, right?
Right. For sure. I think it's just healthy to think back and be like, you know what, let's, as an exercise, like what still can we improve upon? And if we can, great. If not, it's good to try. So.
Yeah.
So in the coming season, knowing that you had more in the tank, let's say in your last throw at Worlds, is your focus typically more like Christoph Kip was here and like does he focus more on technical cues or fields?
What do you want to focus on? Technique, your feelings in the circle, going into this next year, maybe major goal. What are you thinking moving forward?
Yep. So as for like the major technical, I guess, emphasis this next year it's really an extension of the things I started feeling pretty good at the end of this past year. So getting my weight over my left side out of the back and not dumping in with my hip like I tend to. If I have a good throw, I do that better. If I have a bad throw, I'm dumping into the middle a little bit more. And it really comes down to just increasing the amount of throws I have where my center of mass is over my left leg a little bit more. And I think that's the biggest thing that we're working on. Because if I do that, I throw higher, my right ground's in a better position. So that's kind of the first point of emphasis this year.
I would say a little bit of both. Yeah, I think a little bit of both. Yeah, tempo out of the back and not ripping too much. Yeah. Samoan.
He said the mock beats didn't throw far enough during the first 3 weeks went home. Like
How many times you go home early during the mock meets?
It was just one day because I threw far enough the other times after that because I was pissed off.
Yeah, and I'll say to that, like I remember getting the one day you messaged me like I'm going to throw 70 in training, and it was like 69.90 or something, and it was even I just remember there was multiple weeks of you voxing me and being like, dude, it's over. These dudes are effed.
I remember those conversations with you so vividly because it really does give you the confidence and you start to figure it out like, oh my gosh, man, it's not going to be that hard. Like I can do this, and yeah, those mock meets were huge.
So is there a single moment in your journey with the sport, either good or bad, that's kind of helped to drive you to the level you've achieved when you reflect back on your career?
Is there one moment that was like a catalyst? Maybe where you were down and it just like, that's it, back up.
I think that, the big decision point I had in my career was after the Tokyo Olympics in 2021. So after failing to reach the final there, that was the big moment of my career where I had to decide, like, am I going to keep going and figure out how to succeed in this sport to the level I know I can, or am I done? Because either way, it would have been the right choice at the time. Like, don't get me wrong, I had plenty to be proud of, and there's a lot of people who retire after things like that and move on with their lives because it is tough to keep going in this sport. It's been 10 years just with Dane, another 4 years of college before, 5 years of college before that, 2 years of high school. It's a lot on your mental state. But I think just realizing that moment, I'm going to keep going, it forced me to commit, because if I'm going to keep going, I cannot fail to make a final again. Or at least I have to make some finals, or else what's the point of all this? And that was a huge, huge moment for me where I decided that.
We'll do one more.
Yeah. So, can you just lean in a little bit more about your mental preparation about with each throw and how that evolved from when you were from undergrad until you became professional?
How would you prep for throws? What would you do at a meet as an undergrad versus now with each throw? Like throw 1 through 6 college versus throw 1 through 6 Tokyo.
Yeah. So in college, I would probably have taken like 8 warm-up throws. I would have thrown like way too many warm-up throws. And then throw 1, I would have been hesitant, just trying to get a mark for the final, just trying to make it to get 6 throws in the meet. And then throw 2, I would have changed the tempo, which would have messed up everything, because I think the goal of throwing is to have every single throw be exactly the same. And for me, if everything feels the same, when you have adrenaline, those are the throws that go further. Now, if you're all of a sudden thinking about making the finals, or okay, I need to be safe on this one because I have 2 fouls, then you've kind of already lost. Like there's already changes being made that you typically wouldn't do in practice, and you typically aren't trying to do. So that's the difference now. Being more prepared for the meet consistency, I would say.
Any final questions? Okay.
I guess for both of you, since you guys have worked together for a decade, how's your relationship changed over that time? How do you handle confrontations or disagreements between the two of you?
I don't know if we have Okay, so how have you and I changed over 10 years? We don't drink as much together anymore.
Oh yeah.
No, I think. But do we have confrontations? Like, I don't know. Or disagreements?
I would say it kind of worked out to where I started to trust you pretty early on. I remember the first cue, I talked about this, was getting the right down in the middle of the circle versus being like a foot to the left. And the first 2 months of this, I was listening to you, but I wasn't really. Like, I was like, I think I can still over-rotate and throw far. I can figure it out. I've thrown like 62 in practice. I can do this. And then you kind of told me, like, listen, in this next video you send me, that right foot needs to be in the middle of the ring. I need you to do this at least once, because you're like, it can be done. I just was refusing to do it properly. And then I was like, all right, let me set up the tripod. I'll take this stupid video, and then Dane will be off my back, and he'll keep sponsoring me with earth-fed muscle protein that I really want. and then I take the video and I do the throw, and it's way better. And the flight path is better, and my left lands quicker. I have a bigger wrap, and then I start throwing further. And I'm like, oh man, I should probably listen to my coach. It's probably a good idea. And I think that made things a little bit easier moving forward, where we didn't really have as many disagreements. I think, if anything, like, there was always tension, like, after one of the championships where I didn't make the final. Like, it was like a moment where, like, man, what did we do wrong? How do we figure this out? What are we doing? And it was like, it's hard to plan after that, because you're in a bad state of mind. But even if that was the biggest friction points we had, we came back in the fall and we got better.
Yeah.
I have one question. How did you two hook up?
He emailed me. So he emailed me about protein, and then I conned him into letting me coach him.
Yeah, that's accurate. I
And
just
so
wanted free protein.
And I was like, well, I was basically like, who's coaching you? And he said, nobody. So I was like, all right, well, I'll agree to this, but you got to let me coach you. And then that's how it started rolling. And I guess the thing, too, with this is that's interesting is that Alex threw really well. And then what happened is, and then Sam came. Because Sam had seen Alex throw really well. I think that's how that's how it went.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he worked with you around that time, and then then the garage strength discus crew began throwing into the goats.
Yeah, literally throwing into goats. Yeah, I think I would echo all that stuff. I think the preparation is better. I think we communicate pretty clearly. We're always talking almost every day on a walkie-talkie app. So I think and also just enjoying time together. I think that's big.
Absolutely. Yeah, that it definitely helps when you're not. I don't know if we ever talked about it, but I never felt like there was anything I wanted to like hide from you about my training. I always felt comfortable to communicate. And I think that's not always the case, with athletes. So that's huge.
Yeah, I think there was only one time that I was like, when you were in Aurora, I was like, yo, how many of these lifts are you actually doing? And I'm doing all the lifts. And that's because I didn't know if you were big of it and were clowning around too much. But that was it.
No, if anything, we were just going off the program by doing dumb extra shit or lifting too heavy and trying to max out too much.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Alex.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. Hope it was beneficial.
Absolutely. Peace.
Peace.